Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to do my top 10 best movies of 2022. But before we get started, I thought it was really hilarious because right before I was gonna shoot this video, right before it, I get an email and it says, "Hey guys, we have some very special sales going on today, only on my new film, Desert Fiends film. Today, only you can get co-executive producer credit for only $260. It would normally be $500. Or you can also be an executive producer on the film. Well, you can get the credit for only $400. And it would normally be $1,000. This is a very spatial price because he doesn't know how to spell, and he doesn't even really care about putting the effort into just, typing words correctly on a page. A very spatial price, and will never be this low again. Like, ooh, thanks again for all the incredible support on the new film from Chauncey. And it's like, yeah, oh. But you guys see what I mean? Like this embarrassing trash here that's going on. The fact that people would actually pay to be a producer. That's not how being a movie producer works, number one. Number two, being a producer doesn't just mean getting the credit. Being a movie producer is a job. And people like this, they make movies look bad. Because this is not how the business should work. This is not how movies should work. This is not anything to look up to and to say that, like, oh yeah, wow, he's really successful. Like, no, this is bad, very bad. And the worst part is the fact that this guy has my email, and so I can't like go to the unsubscribe button or anything because it's not like a website where it's automatic. He took all the emails from the people who donated one time, and then he's just like going to email them for the rest of their lives, I guess. So I guess maybe the next email I'll probably block him. But I do need to make sure that my movie gets there whenever it gets there in the future. Because I did order that a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, and if it doesn't get sent to me, then we'll be dealing with some more video making you guys probably won't you won't like it because it's like I ordered that and it's like, when's that ever gonna get here? Like how many years late is that gonna be? Like I honestly, if I'd had known that it would have been this late, I would never even ordered it to begin with. But that's besides the point. So anyways, best movies of the year. Let's stop talking about the worst movies of the year, because this is supposed to be the best. First off, I have about 10 honorable mentions. This is kind of like the top 10 B movies of the year. Like, not that they're B movies, but I just think that they're all like B's. They're not, none of them are A's. They're all just B plus, B minus, or just B. And so this is kind of like a top 10 B's. So Jackass Forever, I thought that this was pretty good, even though I'm not really a fan of the Jackass series. I thought that this was actually pretty funny. I can't really remember it very much, and I don't think I'd ever really watch it again, though. But I'm glad that the Jackass fans got a new film, and it was pretty funny, I gotta say. Studio 666, this was a very surprisingly good but not so good movie. I don't think that it really should have been made because of, what happened after it. In real life, it was probably really bad to have made this movie because the thing that happened afterward was probably a result of making this movie. Like, it really cursed them for real. And it's basically all about this band that, of course, they're the Foo Fighters. And they go to this haunted house to make their next album. And it gets really boring for most of the movie, but there are a lot of great graphic kills. It's pretty fun at some points, and there are some really funny jokes. But yeah, it just isn't the greatest movie. It isn't the worst movie. It's just in the middle. Barbarian, this is a very overrated horror movie that came out last year. It has probably the best first half of any movie of the year, though. Like, the first half of this movie is extremely suspenseful, intense, scary even at some points, very well acted. But the second half of this movie completely falls apart, and it turns into something that, we've seen a million times. And even worse, it turns into like a Me Too message movie, where it becomes more about the message and less about making a good horror movie. And they even had like this it'll probably be on the worst scenes of the year for the awards show that I do. There's this scene where the main girl talks to the police and they just don't help her at all. And it's so cartoonish and fake and phony. And it's like, even if you want to have these incompetent police characters, at least that they would help her a little bit. Like, that they wouldn't be like in this movie. Or would they? Like, it was just really cartoony, though. Really, really fake and phony. Next up is Weird, the Al Yankovic story. This was a really in-the-middle movie because I really was confused for a lot of the movie. Because there are some really sincere, emotional moments. There's some really great storytelling in this movie. But then there's a lot of stuff that's really just... It's a spoof, so it's not sincere. It's like, how can this be a sincere telling of your life story if you're doing this, like, joke? If you're just joking around and, like, with all these sort of contrived, cartoony scenarios, So a lot of the movie, I was kind of just sitting there like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, why? There's this whole sequence where probably like the whole second half of the movie where he hooks up with Madonna, and that was really not very good. But the first half, there were some really funny jokes, and it was a very positive movie, and there were some great sequences. I really liked some of the music a little bit. It wasn't the greatest music, though. It was just kind of okay. And so this movie was just okay. So next up is Terrifier 2. This movie is basically the first one on steroids. I mean, all the problems that the first one had, this movie just has, like, even worse. And there are so many moments and sequences in the movie where I just felt like, if I wanted to watch Halloween 4, I would just go watch Halloween 4. Like, I don't like this thing nowadays where people think that in order to make a movie, that they can just, like, copy another movie and then be like, hey, look, it's like the older movies. And it's like, no, you're just copying. Like, do something original. The violence in the movie is just so over the top in a bad way, where you can just see that the director is showing off, and you can see that, we really didn't need to have all this here. Like, a lot of it was just so, like, it was like a cartoon. It was like an adult cartoon. The main character, the quote-unquote final girl, she was extremely boring. She was extremely unlikable. She was just the most generic, like, been there, done that final girl that I've ever seen. And there were some great sequences in the movie, though, in the first half. There's this whole dream sequence where he's kind of like Freddy Krueger, and they're on, like, this kid's reality show. And then there's this sequence where there's also this kind of great hinted at storyline where her brother wants to dress up as Art the Clown, and that storyline never goes anywhere or pays off. And it was disappointing because it felt like they were trying to do a Halloween 4 type of thing, and the main complaint that people have about Halloween 4 and 5, what it seems, is that they don't like that she never fully becomes a killer. And well, in this one, he never even puts the costume on and kills anyone, and then it's a dream sequence, none of that ever happens. And another thing that happens in this movie is that at a certain point, you're like, okay, I hope this movie's over soon, because it's gone on long enough. If I wanted to watch the director's cut, I'll watch that at a later time. I just want to see the regular version. But no. You look at the screen and you see that there's an hour left. And it's just an hour of the boring final girl fighting the clown at this carnival, this abandoned amusement park fun house, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, this did not need to be this long. Like, if I was knowingly, like, watching a director's cut of Terrifier 2, that's fine. But they put this out as the theatrical version. Like, I really regret not putting this movie on my bad movies list, because it deserves to be there. It's just that there's so much great stuff in the movie, too, that it makes it hard to put it on a bad list. Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank. This was a movie that I was really harsh to, and it's because I didn't know what I was going into. It turns out that it's this Blazing Saddles animation remake. But what I thought going into it was that it was just going to be an original story with a couple of Blazing Saddles references. So I really wasn't prepared for Blazing Saddles animated. And I gotta say, it was pretty good. Like, now knowing, having those expectations, it's okay. It's not the worst movie in the world. It's not the best movie in the world. The main thing is that I just really don't know if it's for kids or not, because it's like most of the movie kind of rides on, like, oh, did you see Blazing Saddles? Well, remember that joke? Well, here's how it is in this movie. But I liked it. Next up is Windfall. This was another thing that I've seen a lot nowadays, and this is about Terrifier 2. But another thing that I've seen a lot nowadays is that these horror movies, quote unquote, they pretend like they're really, making a tribute to the 80s, making a tribute to all those old horror movies that people love. Well, one of the main factors that all of those horror movies had in common is that they all had nudity in them at some point. And for some reason, nowadays, they won't put that in films, or else you know what they'll do if they do. They'll hire SJWs to ruin it. Well, Terrifier 2 doesn't have any nudity whatsoever anywhere in the movie. And to me, like, if you watch a horror movie, there's a checklist. Is it scary? Are the kills good? Is there any nudity? Is there any blood and gore? That's like the checklist. If you don't have one of those things, like, how can you even consider that a proper throwback to 80s horror movies? Where, every 80s horror movie's had a pair of boobs somewhere in the movie. But apparently nowadays we can't do that anymore, so... And it's like, fuck off. Like, if you don't have that, it's not a real horror movie. Sucks to suck. Windfall was a really simple movie. Basically, the whole movie was just acting. You had these three actors. You had Jesse Plemons, Lily Collins, and the guy from I Love You, Man. And I don't know, I can't remember his name. It's like Jefferson is it like Jefferson Samis? Like, I really can't remember this guy's name at all. Like, wait, let's see, like Jason Franco. No, not James Franco, but like, what's his name? Like, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, the Muppets movie, David Same Frankie. Okay, the guy from I Love You, Man. They all give really good performances, and the whole movie is just them acting with each other. It's a very simple but tense thriller. There's moments of comedy, there's moments of drama, and it really increases in intensity as it goes along. And because you don't know why one of the characters is there. And then at the end of the movie, when it all comes together, they have this amazing, powerful sequence between these two characters where you find out who the real, who's the real sides of both of them. And it's just so incredible. It's such great acting. But then, unfortunately, the whole movie is ruined by one of the worst endings of the year, where they just decide to do something really random, and it's just like, wow, you just ruined the whole movie. Like, this movie could have been in the top 5 of the year, but you had to ruin it with that stupid ending. And then The Munsters by Rob Zombie. I thought that this movie was surprisingly decent. It had a really comforting and good tone, like a positive tone. Like, it's a movie that you could watch and it's perfect for any mood that you're in. And I liked a lot of the things that happened. I thought that there were some good jokes here and there. The main funny part for me was there was a character who was like Nosferatu, and he was just so funny because he was like obsessed with rats. And then I really love the guy who played the uncle in this movie, the vampire uncle. The only problem that I'll say, well, there's two problems. Number one, this movie cuts off way too early. I was really shocked that, like, this whole movie ends when they move into the new house, they're settled in, the movie ends. And it's like, I was expecting for, like, the second half of the movie to start. Like, it was the exact opposite of Terrifier 2, where I was wondering, there's another half of this movie still, right? Like, it's not just going to end now, and then it ended. The other problem is Sherry Moon Zombie. I gotta be honest, like, if you want to know about a lot of the jokes in this movie, I really have a strong feeling that she wrote the majority of the jokes, because a lot of them feel like really cutesy, like just bland, generic, like kids' jokes, quote unquote. Like, they're kids' jokes. But yeah, this movie wasn't that bad. It's nowhere near as bad as people say it is. Just because it's a Rob Zombie movie means you're going to have a lot of people who automatically say it's the worst thing ever. And then you're going to have a lot of people who say it's the best thing ever because it's Rob Zombie. I just think it's okay. Next up is Jerry and Marge Go Large. This movie, they were trying to kind of do like a Social Network type movie. And it's a true story. It's all about this old couple. And they find this way to rig the lottery. And it gets really good. It's pretty funny. I really like the romance between the leading characters. And it's just another positive movie. It's a positive, good movie. And you can see, too, that there's like a trend with the movies that I thought were better were the more positive movies of the year. And then the movies that were more negative were on the, the worser movies of the year. And so that would be another thing just to, look at and take into consideration. Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe was another great movie of the year. There were some things I didn't like about it, but it was really funny at some points, especially that opening 30 minutes where the kids just completely know automatically how to do that machine, the docking machine thing, because it reminds them of sex, and I thought that was hilarious. The thing that I really liked about the movie was that they essentially created the perfect love interest for Beavis and Butthead. She's this amazing character where she starts off and you think, wow, she's a really heroic person because, she has all these accomplishments and she's an astronaut, but then as the movie goes along, you can really see how evil she is and how morally corrupt she is, and she's really perfect for Beavis and Butthead. Like at the end of the movie, I really thought like if they got to sleep with her, and then the whole series ended, it would be like a nice ending because it felt like it was pretty right and it was pretty perfect in comparison to like that woman from Beavis and Butthead Do America. Like this character, she felt so much more natural as a love interest to them because she was so morally flawed like them. I did expect to see more universes though, so that was a little disappointing. But yeah, it was a pretty decent movie. Like, I would watch it again for sure. It was overall better than the reboot series that they ended up doing. And oh my god, did I put that on my rankings list? I think I did. For my TV rankings. I forgot. Okay, now we're on to the top 10 best. 10 is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Obviously, a lot of people have already talked about how good this movie is, and I'm not going to go too much into it because it's more of an experience than a movie. Like, a lot of the movie is just imagery, and there's not a lot you can say about it. Like, it's like, okay, people are fighting, people are going to these different universes, it's all chaotic, everything's happening all at once. How do I make sense of it? But the first third of the movie, where they're setting things up, I really love that part of the movie because you're getting to know these characters, you're getting to know this family, and they're a really likable family. But then in the second third of the movie, it gets really confusing and just to be too much, I would say. And finally, at the last third of the movie, everything tightens up and it comes to a pretty good conclusion. So overall, this is, to me, 2/3 of a good movie, and I would probably watch it again because this is what I wanted Doctor Strange 2 to do. You know, this movie was essentially the only multiverse movie of the year where they actually go to a shit ton of different universes. And just for that, it deserves to be in the top 10. Number 9 is Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film. So it's really funny because in order to understand why I like this movie enough to put it in my top 10 of the year, you have to understand that when Twin Peaks The Return came out, a year beforehand, I was like, I'm really getting sick and tired of modern TV shows. I'm really getting sick and tired of these shows that they only have like 10 episodes a season, and then they only have like 5 seasons because they don't want to overstay their welcome. That bullshit excuse that we hear over and over and over again. And now they just said the same thing with that Last of Us show, where they're like, we don't want it to go on and on and on and on. And it's like, that's just another way of saying we don't want to overstay our welcome. And so I was getting really tired of it, and I thought, I want to watch a show and be able to watch like 10 seasons of it and not have to quit on it after a measly like 5 seasons. So I was like, you know what, Twin Peaks, I knew nothing about David Lynch, but I knew Twin Peaks was a show that had like 30 episodes or so, plus a movie, and now they're going to come back, and who knows, maybe we'll have 9 more seasons of that show, or 8 more. Boy, was I mistaken. I did not know or even suspect that it would just be that one season, where it barely even feels like a season of Twin Peaks because they purposefully don't even go to Twin Peaks for the most part. Cooper's hardly in any of the season, and it just feels like a reboot more than a sequel to season 2. So it was pretty disappointing and good at the same time. But the most disappointing thing was not having anything after that. Like after that, they're like, okay, we're done. And it's like, what? Why? Like, why? You did this season just introduced like a whole new series. Like, you could be making season after season of this, and it would not get old. It would not get stale. It would be so good. It would be like the most talked about show because it's David Lynch. And that, no, nothing happens. And now it's 2023 even. Nothing. But we did get this. We got Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film. A 4 to 5 hour movie that came out 2021, 2022 in episodic form. And to me, it really works as an episodic movie where you watch the first hour, then the second, third, fourth. It does not work if you watch it all at the same time. But it just really, it's nice to get more Twin Peaks. It really feels like a movie that was made for the fans. It really contrasts well with The Return, because The Return feels like it's trying to do a reboot and they're appealing to, non-Twin Peaks fans. But the Queen of Hearts feels like it's just for Twin Peaks fans for the most part. And there are a lot of great moments in the movie. In particular, there's this whole really good hour where the main character, Annie, she travels to this universe, and it's kind of like the Twilight Zone because she's like reliving her past. And it's really, really good because it's like a dark Twilight Zone episode. So, that's just a taste of what this movie is. I would recommend it if you're a Twin Peaks fan and you wish that they would make more Twin Peaks and stop just sitting around doing nothing. Number 8 is Dr. Death. This movie was really surprising because I did not expect Full Moon to make a good Puppet Master movie, since, Full Moon isn't really good anymore at making movies. But this actually felt like a return to form. It felt like a true early 2000s Puppet Master movie. The music was back to being like it was in the old Puppet Master movies. The main puppet, Dr. Death, he was a villain. He was not a hero. He was a full-on villain. And it was very simple. Just people get killed at this nursing home. And there's a really good twist at the end, too. So, yeah, I would recommend this movie. Number 7 is Puppet Master Revival. This is another fan film. And it feels like the fans care more about Puppet Master than the actual company that owns the copyright to Puppet Master. Because these fans, they created what is essentially the Cobra Kai of the Puppet Master series, where it's this very refreshing reboot. It respects the characters, it respects the puppets. It's a fun, exciting, but cheesy new story, and it's really, really good. Every puppet gets a chance to shine. There's not too much bad acting, even for a fan film. And in comparison to like Amityville Karen, you can really see like the effort that was put into making this movie, and how sometimes effort can supersede, I have $1 million to make this movie. And excuse me, the way I'm talking, I need water, and I ran out of water. I need to go get another one. So I think that I will go ahead and like run over and get one, because I don't want to like sound like I have a weird voice. I'm talking about these top 6. So number 6 is the greatest beer run ever. This is a very fun film. It is a great true story about this guy who said, I have all these friends in the Vietnam War. I want to go to them and bring them some beer. And then he goes there and he's like... He's just like this guy running around the Vietnam War, in Vietnam, and he's just like running to all these different soldiers, and he's just like avoiding all this death and destruction, and it gets really, really dark because, he doesn't know what the war is really like, and it's a really, really good movie. Like, it's so underrated. It's not the greatest movie I've ever seen, obviously. There's a lot of Oscar bait type stuff in it. There's some bad acting by Zac Efron. But it's such an enjoyable movie. It has a great message, a great anti-war message. And I would say it's one of the better war films that I've seen, because I'd much rather watch this than watch like an old war movie that's just pure propaganda. So yeah, it's a really good true story, and I would recommend watching it for sure. And I'll never forget watching it because I at first I was gonna watch Pearl because I was like, oh, I have to watch that, and I turned it on, and after 5 minutes I was like, nope, and I turned it off, and I remembered, oh yeah, there's that greatest beer run ever, yeah. And then I watched that, and it was just such a amazing positive experience, and it was so funny at some points, and so hard to watch others because it got really dark at certain points. Number 5 is Bullet Train. This movie was so good that it was almost close to being number 1 until the very end. You know, this movie, it was basically about all these people who just happened to get onto this bullet train together, and they're all after this briefcase, or they're after this guy named the White Death. And there are so many great action sequences in this movie. It's very funny, it's very fast paced, the dialogue is really good, it's really clever dialogue at some points. And then the characters are really, really cool and unique and likable. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think that this is one of my favorite characters that I've seen the whole year for 2022. He just does such a good job. He stands out as like a true star. And, you know, Brad Pitt, he's really, really good. And he really shined in this movie as well. And there's so many times, too, where they'll just introduce a character only to kill them off like a second later. And the movie gets so unpredictable at certain points that you really don't know what's going to happen until the end. The ending is a little bit predictable, and it is a little bit silly and by the books. But other than that, this is a really, really good movie. Number 4 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I know that a lot of people don't really know what this film is about. They don't really understand the intentions of the movie. But if you really look at it a certain way and you see exactly what they were intending, it becomes really, really good. I mean, it's just so unbelievable how people pretend like this is a terrible movie when it really is like, it's a really, really good horror movie. I mean, it is so good. It is so intense. It is so refreshing. And the music in this movie, they use like machines out of a slaughterhouse to make the music, and so the music has this really creepy and haunting sound, and it's this really like visceral score. Leatherface in the movie is fantastic because he is the character that you like. He is like the hero of the movie. It's all about basically this group of SJWs, and they're coming to this ghost town because they bought it. And they want to turn this ghost town into like a communist utopia. And I'm not exaggerating by that. I mean, that's literally what they say in the movie, in different words. And it's so funny because, you know, the first 25 minutes are very inflammatory. They kind of make it seem like it's going to be an agenda Texas Chainsaw movie. But then you see that it's not an agenda Texas Chainsaw movie at all, because they show these people as being horrible, it being stupid, taking away Leatherface's home, causing his foster mother, I guess you'd call her, to have like a heart attack and to have to die. They really do some terrible things. They're terrible people, and they're not showing these characters as good. and it makes it so satisfying when Leatherface kills all of them. I mean, this is the truest meaning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, this is the only massacre really in the whole series. There is a sequence in this movie that's probably one of the greatest horror movie sequences of all time, where the main girl, who's unlikable, and that's what was even funnier about this movie, is that, you know, I do think that the cast did not know the intentions of the movie, and so they played it very straight and very much like they were actually supposed to be likable. Well, there was this interview with the cast, and they were asking this girl, like, tell us what the movie's about. And she's like, well, it's all about a group of cool kids. You know, we're the cool kids. And like, I think even the interviewer laughed, like it was so embarrassing, because it's like, wow, she really thinks that these are the cool kids. Like, I really hope that was sarcastic, but I just know that it's not. And she goes onto the bus to hide. There's a bus full of people. They're all on there because it's raining outside. And Leatherface comes onto the bus, and he kills every single person on the entire bus. I mean, it is just so incredible. It's so amazing. It's definitely one of the best things ever in horror movie history. And one of the greater things that they do too, it is executed a little badly in terms of the dialogue, but they bring back the character of Sally, which you guys have already heard what I think that they should have done. You know, the actress who played Pam in the original movie, she had a theory that Pam escaped, and so you could have actually made it where Pam came back, and then you could have had that same actress play her. But what I really loved was that they basically made fun of Halloween 2018, and they also kind of did a little bit of a riff on Part 2. And that's what I felt like a lot of people didn't get about this movie, was that they didn't see the comedy. They didn't see the satirical elements of things, where, you know, it's similar to Texas Chainsaw 2, you know, where if you guys have seen the deleted scenes for Part 2, they have this scene where, like, people see a horror movie, and then they get out of the theater and they get killed by the family. And I think even Joe Bob Briggs is there or something in the theater, and it's just very satirical. And I don't think that people got that out of this movie, but that's what I got. You know, I really felt like, especially with the whole Sally thing, she comes back and she's so retarded, she gets killed like within seconds of arriving into town. And it's just so great, because it's like, you expect this boring final girl to come to the rescue and she's gonna save the day, but no, she gets wrecked by Leatherface, and it's pretty funny. And then finally, the ending is really surprising and great too, because this character that you hated the whole movie, I mean, Melody, she really is like one of the most unlikable characters the whole year. But she had a journey throughout the film where she had to learn the truth, and she had to sort of change her ways. And I really like that even though she changed her ways, she gets killed brutally at the end of the film, just cuts her head off, and that's the final shot. It's so great. It's such a... I could watch this movie right now, but I will say, when I watch this movie again, I will skip the first 25 minutes, because even though it is a satire, I'm so sick of seeing these types of people in movies and TV shows. like these fucking SJW characters where they're so obnoxious and so unlikable and they're so awful. I'm so sick of them. And so, like, I would skip those first 25 minutes, admittedly. Number 3 is Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. And no, I'm not joking at all. This was a really big surprise to me because I wasn't even planning on watching it because I've never even seen Chip and Dale before as a kid, but wow. The people who made this movie, they made a really good movie. It's a really smart, funny movie about Chip and Dale and their friendship, and they come back after all these years of taking a break to solve this mystery of, it's basically this sort of horror story where these characters from popular kids movies and shows, they get kidnapped and then they get turned into pirated, like, straight to DVD sequel characters. And so it gets really, really good. And in particular, one of the best things of the year for me was that they had the original Sonic design from Sonic the Hedgehog. The one that was so bad that people complained until they said that they would change it. And, he is one of the funniest characters of the year. And it was so funny that they used that and that he was actually one of the characters in the movie. Like, I never expected to see that, and he was so creepy, and he was so funny at the same time. And then it was really funny, too, Peter Pan being one of the villains, and the real-life connotations with that. This was a really smart and fun, funny movie. I would highly recommend it, even if you've never seen Chip and Dale. Number 2 is The Black Phone. As people have said before, this is like a Stephen King movie, which it was. The original story was written by Stephen King's son. But this was a very refreshing movie. I don't think it's necessarily a great movie, but it was refreshing, this original horror movie. I mean, it really did feel like a horror movie, and the character was pretty creepy. There were some really great ideas that they didn't lean into really with the supernatural, unfortunately, but still, I really liked this movie quite a bit. There was a lot of great stuff that happened. It really, to me, felt like a Goosebumps episode rated R. And this is the prime example that I would say of, like, see guys, if Goosebumps was rated R, it could work. The best thing about the movie is the kids, because the kid actors in this movie, they're all really good. And usually you have these terrible kid actors and things, and, you kind of have to talk around them because you don't want to, bully a kid on YouTube because that's, it's mean. You don't want to be like that. But these kids were really good at acting. And so, especially the main sister, who has, like, the Stephen King kid powers, I would watch it again, too. That's another reason why it's in the top 10 of the year. A lot of the movies on this list, I would never watch them again, quite frankly. Number 1. The number 1 movie of 2022 is Top Gun Maverick. And now, first off, I hated the first movie. This movie took the first movie, and they found what was wrong with the first movie, and they improved on it. And they took all the problems, and they considered those when they wrote the script to this film. And instead of Tom Cruise just being this, egotistical, like, young guy, hotshot character, it's finally a movie where like his aging is coming into factor, and so it felt a lot more real. It felt a lot more like, yeah, this is a real character that's on screen here, not just a blockbuster action movie character. The action in the movie was really tense, was really, really good. I was on the edge of my seat watching the action in this movie. Really, really, I wanted these characters to survive. And it was so good. It was so refreshing. You had such a good feeling after watching it, because it's a movie where it's almost unanimously loved. Like, people really like this movie. It's not one of those where it's like polarizing, like with Texas Chainsaw. You know, everyone who saw this movie said, yeah, that was a good movie. And we don't get any movies like this nowadays, you know. I don't really care about getting more, like, sequels. Like, I don't just like it because it's a sequel and because I want to see more of my franchises, like certain other YouTube channels that, you know, that's all they care about are just my franchises. Like, no, it's just a great movie all by itself. And I don't know, there's not really much else to say. Like, this is what movies should be, not Amityville Karen, not Halloween Ends. So that's about it. Please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of my top 10 of the year, and then please subscribe to our channel. Tomorrow I will be doing a video called Top 10 Movies That Should Be Remade. So goodbye everybody, see you soon.